and welcome to our direct talk today. Girmay will be joining us, a member of the Omna Tigray, a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. My name is Girmay, and I'm a member of Omna Tigray. It's a global registered 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. Our organization was formed with the belief that access to educated and inclusive advocacy is key to fighting disinformation and injustice. And our mission is to create that platform for the Tigrayan and broader global community.
When was your organization formed, and what are you trying to accomplish? And how did you pick your primary areas of focus as an organization?
Our organization was founded in December 2020, like many organizations, by a collective of Tigrayan professionals from various backgrounds, and it was in direct response to the genocide waged on the Tigrayan people on November 4th, 2020. We have approximately 60 volunteers across the US, Canada, Europe, Africa, Australia, and Asia. And we're spread across various groups, and that helps us to cover different facets that are needed in advocacy. So things like legal and policy, public relations, partnerships, data research, technology, social media, branding, marketing are some of the few. And some of our volunteers are spread across multiple groups, and that way they can use their talents to the best of their ability.
How do you fund your operations? You've discussed your organizational mission and all the things you plan to accomplish. How do you plan to translate your plans into concrete actions? In other words, how do you measure your success?
In terms of funding our operations, we're self-funded. We plan on developing and working on specific projects whereby we look to get grants and also like funds from our partners to help. So for example, we've just recently started a project where we're working with Hijrana, and so we're going to be doing fundraising for that, but all of our day-to-day operations are pretty much self-funded. And then in terms of how we discuss our organizational mission and the things that we want to accomplish, we meet regularly with the team members. So the few dozen of us, we meet pretty frequently, like once a week or every other week. And within the teams I mentioned previously, so things like public relations, marketing and branding, things of that nature, we typically assign team leads. And within the team leads, there's tasks assigned to the volunteers within their team. And then there's a continuous communication outreach. And then board members and other team members will kind of have a benchmark of success. And that could be, hey, did we get certain things accomplished? Or what would we like to improve upon? And we're always looking for new volunteers and work pretty collaborative with everyone. So that's essentially what we do. Helping have this organizational structure and teams really helps us keep on track.
Before the start of the war, what did your personal engagement with the Tigrayan diaspora community look like?
Yeah, I'm based in Vegas, and we have a pretty good Tigrayan community here. In terms of like relationship building. So I was pretty connected to the Tigrayan diaspora. That's what I grew up with, like my family, friends, and things of that nature. So really involved in the Tigrayan community in terms of attending events. And I knew from a young age like what TDA was and things of that nature. So I think the Tigrayan diaspora generally had a pretty strong relationship with Tigray, and for many that weren't before, definitely post the start of the genocide are developing that relationship now.
What was the turning point that led you to embrace activism? At what point did you say to yourself that you had to be engaged on this issue? What's been driving you so far?
Yeah, I think for most of us, for myself personally, the majority of my family is based in Tigray. So as soon as November 4th and even before November 4th started, many of us in the diaspora and even in Tigray and elsewhere in Ethiopia started having like a very unsettling feeling that something was happening. We've seen a level of hate speech escalation for the past couple of years. I know I've traveled to Ethiopia several times, even in advance of November 4th, 2020, I started to feel kind of an anti-Tigrayan sentiment. And so when I started visiting, I spent the vast majority, pretty much all my time in Tigray, just with family and things of that nature. And so for me, it was instantaneous how to help. I'm fortunate that Omna Tigray was formed so I can join. But prior to that, I think myself and a bunch of other members of the diaspora were just looking to help in any way possible. There was lots of group chats formed, a lot of organizations formed, and all of us were trying to do whatever we can locally. We tried to plan protests, get media coverage, just spread awareness. And people are doing that on an individual level and then trying to do more so in a group and societal level. So I think, yeah, for me, it was instantaneous as soon as I knew it was happening, particularly because it was something that I was following for quite some time beforehand.
How do you say your life has changed since November 4 of 2020? What's changed for you since the start of the war? What are some of the personal sacrifices paid in this line of work in terms of time, savings, etc.?
Yeah, I think for me, like my parents instilled in my siblings and I like a strong tie to Tigray. So I always felt really tied to Tigray in general. I think what changed in me, of course, is, we're living life for a greater purpose now. You're going to have to be less selfish with your time. Obviously, this is a priority. It's not so much necessarily I would consider it as sacrifice. It's something that's necessary. This is directly impacting myself, my parents, my family members and friends. I've lost a lot of family members during this war, some as a direct result of the genocide, some just by virtue of natural causes. And because of the telecommunications blackout, I was unable to have final moments with them. That was cheated for me and my family, and as is the case for many Tigrayans. So I think for me, it just strengthened my tie and relationship to Tigray. It's what I think about when I wake up. It's what I think about right before I go to sleep. I think it's a privilege that we're able to advocate. We're not only advocating for the people of Tigray, which includes ourselves. We're trying to do this for the future generations as well and try to kind of improve their livelihood. So it's changed me significantly. It definitely puts in perspective that, life is short, time is short, and how you choose to live your life and make an impact really counts on how you're acting today.
So your work is mostly on informed activism. I read an article on your website about digital activism and hate speech. While working on different social media platforms, how have you been dealing with hate speech?
I think it's easy we're always looking to improve. This is on an individual level and as an organizational level through Omna. And we're always open to like feedback and things like that. But we do understand that with the majority of us being of Tigrayan ethnicity and also it being an organization that focuses on Tigray, which is going to be at the front end of the Tigray genocide, we understand that it's going to come with criticism. But a lot of that is, we try not to pay too much attention because essentially like a lot of people, particularly at the beginning of the war, were hurling insults just to kind of silence us in the same way that they did to our people back home. We do have the resources and the freedom to speak and advocate more freely, of course, here. So we're not going to let that deter us on an individual level or an organizational level. But if there is things that we're always getting advice, even from other organizations, like to work collaboratively, or from individuals saying like, hey, I would love Omna to do this or that of that nature. And we always like consider things. But when it comes to like criticism, it's the same things that we've seen the Tigray people all over the world face. And we try not to focus too much on that because we know that our priority is something much bigger.
Would you say activism is where it should be right now? And what do you think Tigrayan activists, local media, and those leading diplomatic efforts have been doing right so far? And what do you think they could be doing better?
I think activism is something that's always evolving. So where it should be at this point, I think there's always an attempt for us to do more and want to do more, because obviously Tigray is still undergoing an active genocide, and the humanitarian crisis is very real. The hatred towards Tigrayans is very real. So, it'll get to the point when those things cease to exist, the genocide, the crisis, the hate speech, the mistreatment of Tigrayans. And so for us, it's always something continuous. I don't know if there's like a point where we say we're satisfied. It's something that we're always like chasing, because we do want to advocate for our people. And I think in terms of Tigrayan activists, local media, things of that nature, what we've done so far is, it's a pretty difficult thing advocating for Tigray, because generally, particularly in the West, there's not super familiarity with African politics, let alone the regions in Ethiopia. For many people, this was the first time they've ever even heard about Tigray or any of the other regions. So first, it's like taking the step and educating them what Tigray is and why they should care. And I think we've penetrated a lot of markets, whether that's like consumers or just a general public, or like members of Congress, and helping them to better understand who we are, and our unique individual plights. For many, they knew the larger Ethiopian diaspora is pretty significant in the United States particularly, but people don't know about the different groups comprised within that diaspora. So for a lot of Tigrayans, this is the first time like their voice as a Tigrayan is being seen and heard. So I think we were able to do that way. I think in terms of what we need to improve on, kind of like what I was saying before, there's always more to improve on. We can work harder with diplomacy, just making sure we don't get complacent, of course, because people are still dying of starvation. And there are a lot of people dying of preventable diseases. And I think we always see renewed sense from different advocacy groups calling for additional fundraising. How can we collaborate and work on different projects? Just a bunch of different things. So there's always levels, there are areas of improvement, and we're just trying to, I think everyone's just trying to do the best they can. And the situation's ever evolving, and everyone's just trying to like keep in touch and communicate with each other to see how they can best help.
Do you think enough is being done in terms of getting other groups on board? Have we made our case to the world, and shouldn't there be more allies with us on marches and demonstrations by now?
Yeah, I think the difficult challenge is, ideally, of course, we'd love everyone to care about Tigray as much as we do, but we understand with so many things happening in the world globally, that's not always going to be the case. And as I stated, it's pretty difficult because first we have to do the education of what is Tigray and then why people should care. Oftentimes people don't feel if it personally impacts them, then there's no reason for them to advocate. But I know with Omna Tigray and other advocacy organizations and individuals, even at the community level, there's always been an outreach to different organizations and individual groups, whether it's Armenian groups, Jewish World Watch, things of that nature, to collaborate with us and to help provide support services. And oftentimes, just because we don't necessarily see them marching on the street in protest, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not collaborating with Tigrayans on the back end, sharing advice, information exchange, things of that nature. So ideally, of course, we'd like the whole world up in arms, but we're doing our best educating everyone one person at a time. And then we have seen a lot more general awareness and finding new spaces to advocate for Tigray, both in person or digitally. So that's something that we're continuously working towards. And we hope, one day like Tigray just becomes something that everyone knows and feels like they have a deep history for. And there's if we can utilize any means at our disposal. So that's what we're going to try to do.
So tell me, what's next for you and your organization? What are you planning to further enhance your work?
We're not sure how and if negotiations in Tigray will happen, but we're attentive to the current and future needs of Tigray. And we really want to promote peace, and obviously an ultimate end to the genocide will help that. and just providing recommendations on the process. We work with NGO partners in providing our recommendations, working with Tigrayan organizations in Tigray and elsewhere, and what that looks like. And then what we really want to do is ensure that justice and accountability happens for all Tigrayans that have suffered and continue to suffer, whether it's like through ethnic cleansing, famine, SGBV. We want to make sure that justice and accountability is at the forefront. And then also afterwards, and even now, providing some rehabilitation for all those who have suffered. And then I mentioned earlier, but another goal for our organization is to work more towards specific projects. We've had these overall goals about like general awareness, and like working with stakeholders and other members, whether it's like advocacy organizations or members of Congress, trying to just kind of educate them about Tigray, but also implement change, whether that's through policy or through just, as I mentioned, awareness. And we'd really like to create specific projects. One of the first projects we're doing right now is working with Hidrna, which is a Tigrayan organization providing services on the ground in Ma'ala. And we want to start working, I think, having more centric programs, and then helping and educating people about these organizations that are really doing the groundwork in Tigray, and just kind of using our platform, which we're really thankful to have, and shed light on these organizations that are doing so well. And then, as I mentioned, on the broader scale, it's about rehabilitation, accountability, justice. And one of the big things we want to do is really help with the economic development of Tigray. We know that economic development, particularly after it's been destroyed in this genocide, is going to be essential to the growth of Tigray and to ensure that Tigray remains self-sufficient. And so humanitarian projects are things we want to do, but also helping like institutions and creating effective systems and processes in place. So there's a lot of ambitions that we have, and with a dedicated team, and we're ever growing, we're pretty hopeful of that. And our organization, I'm thankful that our organization is super collaborative. And whether it's, as I mentioned, with individuals, we're always looking for volunteers. We have a volunteer sign up on our website on omnatigray.org, or through organizations. And we know with our goals and with Tigray, as the motivating goal, we know that we'll be able to accomplish so many things.
Jerusalem, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So that ends this edition of our Direct Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in.